Thanks, Rizwan. Wonderful. Um, those claps were as much for you as for Amitabh Bachchan, I guess. Can I just have the lights on? And so as we start this conference, let me invite Ms. Rajeshwari and Professor Murtaza back on stage. To give you a little background, we issues where we acknowledge this and hopefully then continue to address this issue, particularly for our students here at the Maulana Azad National Urdu University. The reason this conference is important to us is also because this is a unique university, not just because it has a mandate for Urdu, but it has an equally strong mandate for women. When the university was set up, when the act was passed, it was mandated by law that this university will cater to the Urdu language on one hand and to women on the other. And therefore, you will find that at this university, we take a lot more affirmative action as far as gender is concerned. In most of our departments, the gender ratio is 60-40, if not more than that. Most of our students are women, and this particular exercise was meant to address our men as much as we wanted to address our women. We invited some of our researchers who are doing cutting-edge research as far as gender empowerment is concerned, who will both talk about the challenges and the tremendous strides that we have made in some few areas. There are some areas in which we have made some improvement, not enough by any stretch of imagination, or those are the issues that we shall discuss. In this inaugural session, we were very fortunate to get Ms. Rajeshwari to talk to us. She is somebody who is already very well known in our state as someone who has taken the entire concern that the state has for women ahead, along with her own initiatives, and we will expect that she will talk a little bit about that. We are a little luckier than most of you. We live in a state where that amount of crime against women is not seen. We are relatively better off. Doesn't mean that we treat our women well. We don't. We treat them very badly, but we treat them better than in Maharashtra or UP or Bihar or Haryana. So we'll have Rama Rajeshwari talk about her initiatives on women's safety and why Hyderabad becomes one of the safest cities for women in the country today. We will have Andrew Fleming join us. Andrew Fleming is from the British High Commission. He will be joining us at 11. But first, before we ask our chief guest to speak, may I request Professor Shahida Murtaza to come and talk about why she thinks that this conference was important. She heads the Department of Women's Studies. She is also the Dean of Social Sciences. Professor Murtaza, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to everybody. I thought we wait for Fleming to come, but I think it's getting late. We can start our program, the academic discourse on the issue, which really we all are confronting of late too much. Let me start with a thanksgiving to this young man here who has joined hands with me when I proposed this seminar. He said immediately, labbaik to it, that he will join me, and he has taken up the career completely. It is his show. I'm just part of it. And I want to thank another boy here, Rizwan, who has done such a marvelous job, such a touchy, the movie what he made, a documentary, really it, blows your mind. He has actually put all the issues what we are going to discuss in this whole 12 hours today, that he has really, through pictures, it is a pictorial representation of women's status and the situation she is confronting in India. It is in a nutshell the status of women. he has presented. Thank you so much, Rizwan, for quickly taking up my, request and doing that. Actually, we thought Pro-Vice Chancellor will be here. Registrar has just taken a while, break. He'll come back and join because there's simultaneously working interviews are going on for important posts. So they have to be there. At a time, we have 2 seminars today, and that's why the higher-ups are broken into 2 groups, and they have to do justice to top it all. Again, there are interviews. So please excuse for that. 11 o'clock Fleming will be joining us, and that will be a great thing. And I welcome all of you on my behalf and behalf of my 2 more departments, colleagues here. Department of Al-Biruni's Center for Al-Biruni, Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, and Department of Social Work. Professor Dr. Shahid is here, Dr. Afroz Alam is here, and then we have the placement cell here, and my department colleagues, if they are there, they all will be welcoming you on this auspicious day for us, because at least one day, all of us will discuss where the women are, whether it makes any difference, whether it has made any difference, that's entirely a different thing. But do you know that Russia celebrates a holiday today? That they do observe this day. So I wish that all countries get equally sensitive about having this day as a special day and try to bring that change which we all want to see in half of the population we are troubling so much. Friends, not many of you, census के पन्ने कभी उठा के आपने देखे नहीं होंगे. फ्लेमिंग नहीं होने का मैं थोड़ा सा एडवांटेज लेके उर्दू में भी बोलूँगी. जब हम सेंसस की खोलते हैं 2-4 पन्ने तो पता चलेगा कि हमारी लड़कियों की तादाद लड़कों से बहुत ही कम है. That gives a sort of mirror image to what society is doing to the girls. Where are they going? Have they not taken birth? That is very unnatural, because God is very beneficial. He doesn't discriminate, and he believes in equality and equity. An equal number, we take birth. We are supposed to take birth. We are supposed to conceive. But we never see the day, we never see the sun rising on the earth, because we are killed, we are irrelated, we are never allowed to be born. That's how Nakushi you have seen our tawfiqs, like small documentation of various opinions. Where is he? And I congratulate him for having done that. We should encourage these boys. A mature artist, of course, a mature photographer, but he did his job very well, and very well done, Tawfiq, for this. I really appreciate your concern. Behind this, there is a force that is Ruben. I think they are the biggest contributor to today's day, that they have done marvelous job. I appreciate on record all of us for what you have done to Manu today and for today's Women's Day, what you have done in the galleries, what you have done in the workshop. You try to change the mindset of the 40 youth here, the future of India. We want to catch them young so that the future is at least safe for the girls in this, because it is not just that we have an generation of men and women, male and female students there, drawn from various colleges, which I think definitely Rubaru would like to come and hear speak, and definitely Amir will be allowing them to come, requesting them to come and speak what they have done in 3 days. But I on my part would like to really from the bottom of my heart thank you, these girls, Rubaru youngsters, for making that much, bringing that much change in the thought power of our youth. Coming back to the census, what I said was, today, not many of you are aware that we stand at 935, 940. In some states, we call them Bimaro. Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, and now this infectious disease spreading throughout India. The female feticide, infanticides are becoming so common that all of us will be naming, God forbid, our children, if not naming, but we wouldn't be wanting our girl children. Yesterday's paper, Times of India, if you have seen, there is a column, I'm forgetting the name of that great lady who has written, who has raised criticism on the headlines of some paper, who had written that 21 lakh girl children are unwanted in India. And this is added to 63 million who have disappeared. And to which Amartya Sen has said that they are the missing girls. At 63 plus 21, where do you stand today? Why don't we want our girl children? Look at the bottom. The bottom is the dowry. Since, I don't want to say, should I say otherwise, I'm compelled to say that it is because of the men that the women are not wanted here. It's because of you that women are not taking birth here. It's because of your demand of dowry, huge dowry, that the girls are not wanted by any parent. Either they kill or they squeeze them after birth or before birth. This is the situation. The economic survey of 2018 say that the Global Economic Forum, that there are the situation, the gender parity stands somewhere, I think India stands at 200 place down. That means how many years it will take for us to bring our girl child on par with men. We talk of development, the state talk of development, the center talk of development, everybody talk of development. But the tragedy is that in reality, women are nowhere to be seen. So development which is, not equal is maldevelopment. We are talking about whom? Will there be only men in this world tomorrow? There wouldn't be any girl. So what are you going to do? I shouldn't use the word what Bhatta said when 2011 census was out. That tomorrow the partners will be men to men. He used very bad language. He was so angry when he looked at that. And when one of the foreign universities reporters came to ask me, Madam, what is the explanation you want to give that your whole India is smelling of girl child blood? Honor killing, domestic violence, burning them alive because of dowry, feticides, infanticides, what not you're doing. How do you explain this phenomenon? And to say that power is not given to women, given the power, they will definitely bring parity. But you have chief ministers, you're proud to have prime ministers, you are proud to, have lot of chief ministers during that time, 5 to 6. Could they make any difference? They could not. So what is that which is required to be changed to bring in parity? Last year, United Nations had adopted men for women as partners, but did not make much change. Today, again UN has raised the theme as press for participation, press for, progress. Progress for what? Press for progress when UN is, raising this theme. This is progress in the sense of gender parity. I hope the government of India and all the countries of SAARC, they adopt this as a serious issue and try to do something. But what is required? Can we compel you to do that? Unless you change, your thinking change, your mindset change. That even Rizwan has done in this one. And I think Nakushi also tried to bring that. Retelling doesn't make any change. What we require is sensitization. Each and every step we require sensitization, that is gender sensitivity. And that's why we thought of Rubaru in doing that practically workshop we conducted to do that. And future also we are going to change in practically, practically we want to catch hold of the youth and see to it that they have their mind, thinking and everything change from re-socialization we want to put them on. The whole process of re-socialization, what is going on at home, that you are excused for all the faults. You are known for, मर्द है करता है वो तो उसका काम है. जैसे कि चीफ मिनिस्टर किसी यूपी के बताए थे, जब रेप्स हो रहे हैं तो मर्द है वो तो कहता है औरतों को चाहिए कि गलत टाइम पे बाहर ना जाए। कौन सा गलत टाइम है मोहतरम? आपके लिए राइट टाइम कौन सा है? आपके लिए तो 12-24 घंटे भी राइट टाइम है, जो चाहे कर ले। एंड इट इज एक्सक्यूजेबल। Violence in all shapes, in all hues, everything we see in and out. Nowhere the woman is safe. At home, outside, in the train, in the vehicle, on the plane. You just see with the development, the change we see in the colors and hues of violence. That's where we have to come and discuss today and every year and I hope that to some extent there will be some change in one of the persons sitting over here, at least out of this 50 or 100 sitting over here. I think our work is done. That's what our concerns effort will be, to constantly, hit the rock. One day or the other, the water will come out of it. And that's our main motto is, and that will remain my motto as long as I'll be active here, that we have to bring in sustainable change. Definitely things are happening. All of you are aware of that Me Too campaign you see. Reclaim your rights, you see those campaigns. You see that has made a definite dent. And we are going to bring in some change. Have a look better, at least once in a while, go through the pannas of the census. You'll see where health stand, where women stand at health like status, where you stand at literacy, where you stand at empowerment, statistics. You will realize that we have not achieved much, but we are here not to be disappointed, but we will, go around with a message that this is going to bring in positive change. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us today and making it definitely a successful day. Thank you.
Okay. So on Professor Murtaza's behalf, a happy Women's Day. As she was saying, one of the messages she wanted to convey, and I am reiterating it because it is important, is that this gender conference is now going to be an annual conference, because not only do we want to encourage activism, which has an important place in transformation of social behavior, we also want to encourage those few of you who are doing robust research on these issues, because that is what finally will lead to some policy changes. Some of you are here, hopefully we will get many more of you as we progress and do this conference every year on International Women's Day, which is, for those of you who don't know, the 8th of March. You see, what was the purpose of this conference, and why are we doing this conference? This year has been a remarkable year. इस साल हमने कई सारे ऐसे पहलुओं पे बहस की जो हमने शायद इससे पहले नहीं की. For example, एक जो बड़ा मसला था इस साल was something that all of you were involved in, which was the issue of triple talaq. What is the issue with triple talaq? Is that a problem? Are Muslim men opposed to it? Did it require a policy initiative that would send Muslim men to jail for 3 years to cause this transformation? The tragedy was not so much the discussion around triple talaq. The tragedy was that very few of us even knew what the issue was about. And that is why it becomes important for some of us, all of us, to talk about it. Afroz here wrote a bit on that issue, and we realized that a lot of what he was talking about was something that most of us did not know. The issue of marital rape, of domestic violence, is that something that we should brush under the carpet, or should we talk about it? One issue that has struck me as very important is, where are we moving forward? And there we see that one of the areas in which we are moving forward tremendously is in the use of technology. How technology as a secular weapon disproportionately impacts women and helps them do much better across the world. We need more studies on this to be able to ensure that there is enough pressure on policy making to take this forward. So the point I'm making is that the reason for this conference was to start off
a serious study on women's studies, a serious research work that goes on year after year, which will not only inform us, but will also enable us to advocate and lobby for policy change. हमारे यहाँ एक और बड़ा मसला जो कई बार लोगों ने कहा कि भाई सबसे ज़्यादा दुश्मनी औरतों की तो औरतें ही करती हैं. You know, there is often this feeling, why are the women themselves responsible? वो जब भी मैं ये सुनता हूँ तो इकबाल का एक बड़ा पुराना शेर है कि करते हैं गुलामों को गुलामी पे रजामंद, तावील मसाइल को बनाते हैं बहाना. It's so easy to blame the victim. It's always so easy to put the blame on the person who's actually the victim. And Iqbal said this 100 years ago. So the point is to understand that it is not, the solution is not to say that it is the women that are responsible and it is the women who should not step out after 9 o'clock and so on. I must end this by one nazam of Kaifi's, who I hope all of you have read, and if you have not, you all should. कैफी ने 50-60 साल पहले कहा था कि ज़िंदगी जहद में है, सब्र के ख़ाबू में नहीं. You will, most of you, even if you don't understand Urdu, you will know what he was saying, कि ज़िंदगी जहद में है, सब्र के ख़ाबू में नहीं, नब्ज़े हस्ती की लहू कांपते आंसू में नहीं, उड़ने खुलने में है निखत ख़मे गेसू में नहीं, जन्नत एक और है जो मर्द के पहलू में नहीं. It's a long nazam. He talks about Aurat in that nazam. May I now welcome Andrew Fleming to this conference and workshop. And start off now with our chief guest, who's just come in. But before I ask Andrew to come and give his presidential address, I will now request Rama Rajeshwari, our police officer, who, as I mentioned earlier, has carried on some revolutionary, some insightful steps that she believes have not been transformative. But I have been seeing some data, and I continue to believe that Hyderabad as a city does better than other cities, but she will tell us what she has done and why she thinks that there is so much more to be done. Thank you so much, Rama, in advance for this. Please.
Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everybody. Esteemed guest of the day, Mr. Andrew Fleming, Deputy High Commissioner, Professor Mr. Khan, Ma'am Shahida Murtuza, and the esteemed academic community of Manu. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Since you've been eagerly waiting to hear what Mr. Andrew has to tell you, I'll keep it very short. Like Mr. Khan said, I have to share some snippets from my past. Usually when I get an opportunity to talk on women's safety, I tend to give a lot of data about my own experiences and what we have not done and what we are supposed to do. So today, before coming to the university, I was thinking, what am I supposed to talk or what am I supposed to tell? Because I'm going to talk to a group of enlightened minds, and I have to be extremely careful with what I have to say. And I was pleasantly surprised to see all the movies which were shown to us this morning. That was really emotional and it was moving. And thanks to the teams, especially Shijit, Rizwan, and the students who did a lot of work to come up something like that, that was really moving. Because 2 months ago, while I was in the US, I presented a paper on gendercide along with Belgium Minister for Defense, Ms. Annemie Turtelbaum. So this was one issue that we spoke about, and I had no idea about how deep the issue was, how big it was. So thank you so much for telling us how bad it is and how much more that we are supposed to do. So before I start, I thought, before boring you with data, I thought I'll share a little bit of an experience that I had to go through, so I call it snippets from my past. So this was from an article that I wrote for Times of India last year. I do write on social issues, and that's my own way of microaggression to initiate a national conversation on issues that matter. So just listen to the stories. I have 6 stories to share. This is precisely what I've written in the article. I am not going to change any of it. I'm just going to read it out, and then we move on to the topic that I was given today, which is a collective social responsibility. So as a law enforcement officer in India, I'm always told that it is my responsibility to keep the women safe. Absolutely, it is my responsibility. But if you want to have safety of women as an agenda, as said by Professor Khan during his address, that if you want to have a developed economy, that having safety of women should be at the center of your policy decisions. So I'm going to tell you why it is important for us to have a collective social responsibility to promote women's safety in India. So the first story was in 1990, and the place was Munnar. It's a small hill station in Kerala. That's where I come from. So it goes like this. I'm eavesdropping on an animated conversation my grandmother was having with great auntie from the neighborhood. It was about the mysterious death of a woman plantation laborer, brutally killed. Her breasts were cut and genitals mutilated. Please pardon me for the mildly graphic details. The tale was terrifying, more so because this small hill station has always been devoid of such crime. They ended the conversation resolving to guard the girls more fiercely. Alas, there ended my freedom to step out to watch the Tata Finlay soccer games. I was never allowed to step out after that, and I was barely 5 years old then. The second story was in 1992. This was in a place called Grahamsland Estate where I grew up, again in this hill station called Munnar in Kerala. Summer conversations in this quaint tea estate were around a 19-year-old Catholic nun found dead in water well in St. Pius Convent in Kottayam. For my friends in school, the fact that even a nun was not safe in a convent was too hard to handle. Every day, the newspapers carried a story on how vulnerable women were. Probably one of the longest-running murder investigations in Kerala, the CBI filed charge sheet in this case only in 11 July 2009, after many, many years. The third story was in 1996 in a place called Pala, where I was educated in college, in a district called Kottayam, again in state of Kerala. The hostel mess in Alfonsa College was full of hushed voices. No, it wasn't the usual girly talk. It was about the case of a 16-year-old girl from Suryanelli, a school student, kidnapped and allegedly raped by 37 of the 42 accused persons over a period of 40 days. It was creating ripples in the political circles. Incidentally, we were from the same school. She was my junior in school. The following days were the most terrifying and saddest of any that we had passed, as we were perpetually told to be on guard, fear-induced with alarming frequency by our teachers. The fourth story was in 2012, March. The place was in Karimnagar, it's a district in state of Telangana, in a village called Pegadapalli, a very small village. And I was posted as Assistant Superintendent of Police in a subdivision called Jagatyal, once a Maoist hotbed. Inspector Mahendra broke open the door of a grim-looking house. I went there with my team of policemen as we reopened a 6-year-old rape-cum-murder case. A searingly vivid scene of crime. Even after 6 years, the trail of blood splatter on the wall was intact. Kavita, I changed the name, I don't want to name the victim in this case, wife of a poor Gulf worker. She was brutally raped and killed in 2006 by her own brother-in-law for refusing his advances. After smashing her head with a boulder, he spent the entire night raping and mutilating the body with a blade. This was my very first experience of solving a long-pending murder mystery and a rape mystery as well. The pain of looking at the graphic images of a mutilated body remained a part of me for a very long time. Fifth story, again in 2012, in December, I was in Jagatyal, and it happened in Delhi, and we all know about it, Nirbhaya. And it really shook the conscience of this nation. And this was one case which had the whole nation in anger. And it changed the entire scenario around how we looked at rape in India. My best friend, who shared the flat with me for 8 years in Delhi, made a frantic call. And she was weeping through convulsive gasps. She asked me not to spare a rapist whenever I came across one. She was echoing the emotions of thousands of girls who took to Delhi streets to protest against the government for failing to provide adequate security to women. The word Nirbhaya echoed across the nation, and the world called Delhi a rape capital. What is wrong with us as a society that we are so comfortable in calling our national capital as a rape capital? And the last story for you today, this was in 2013, and the place is Nalgonda, a district in state of Telangana. I was posted as additional SP in Nalgonda. I was reading an article written by Jason Burke, a correspondent with The Guardian, describing in detail the multiplicity of issues facing India, leading to such acts of aggression. The read was so gripping. And he goes like this: her medical examination and the retrieval of 2 blood-stained rods in the bust confirmed that it was penetration by this rod that caused massive damage to her genitals, uterus, and intestines. The girl was shrieking and shouting so much. Ram Singh put his hand inside her and pulled out flesh. Different periods, different places, but the dehumanizing narrative is shockingly similar in all these snippets from my past. So why I wanted to share these stories with you is because I want you to stop for a minute and think about the way we raise our sons. More often than not, every time there is an issue, there is a rape, there is a sensational case against a woman, we end up having an outrage, a national outrage. Media space is full of graphic details. A lot of people come to TV screens and they shout at each other. But what happens next? And then some of them point fingers at us. They expect the law enforcement to be there all the time for each woman on the street. Is that possible? It is not. So my appeal to you today is that whenever we ask our girls, when we send them out, we ask them to be on guard. But do we ask our sons to be her guard? We don't. How much time it takes for us to tell our boys that when they see a girl, they have to look at the girl as a responsibility and not as an opportunity. Unfortunately, in India, for many boys, their idea of a girl or the idea of having to deal with a girl comes from movies and from friend circle. It comes from informal sources. And we are still reluctant to have such sex education as part of our regular curriculum in schools and colleges. We have a long way to go there. So unless we make an effort, a planned effort, a concerted effort to teach the children the right way of looking at a girl, the right way of treating a girl, the right way of looking at issues which concern women, things aren't going to change. So Mr. Khan was very specific that I should talk about what I have done or what the Hyderabad City Police has been doing in the state for women. We all know about the SHE teams, we all know about the Bharosa Center and the many, many efforts that the state government is doing towards promoting safety of women. We are ahead in the race, but we have a long way to go. Because the numbers, if you look at the numbers, let's talk numbers. If you look at the numbers, Telangana is still one of the states with highest number of crime against women. But if you look at the number of women who are in security forces, I'm talking about a woman like me who is serving as a police officer, we are the lowest in the country with just barely 2.48%. And the national average is barely 7%. So for a 2 billion population, which has almost 50% of women, we just have 7% women serving in the forces to take care of women-related issues. So this is not to suggest that we only need women in the force to take care of women-related issues. Yes, it is your responsibility to do, but experience of my own experience of working in the police force for the last 10 years has given me enough evidence to believe that for a woman to approach a police station freely, willingly, without fear, you need to have women in the police stations. So we've been championing for this cause for a very long time, that we need to have enough number of women in the forces, but that's not enough. So unless the society takes a conscious effort to teach our boys, to teach our men, to treat women, it's going to remain a challenge for a very long time. I'm really glad to see some familiar faces here. Rubaru, indeed, they worked in my district when I was district police chief in Mahbubnagar district. They came and they trained my team. And the team, I do understand that the perception of an average police officer in the mind of the local people is not so great. But if you get a chance, you may ask Rashmi, and she may, if she may deem it right, she may put you on to the constables who were trained by the team. And if you talk to them, you will not believe that they are police officers. They are sensitive, they are empathetic, because it took us a lot of effort. It took us a lot of time and money and resources to train them, to tell them that you need to be sensitive. So we called it a gender peace program. The idea was to sensitize the force to deal with the women who are victims of gender-based violence, and how empathetic and sensitive they should be to these women when they visit the police stations. And this experiment was so successful that now they want to repeat the exercise in all the 30 districts in Telangana. So these are all small little efforts. Thank you. These are all small little efforts. But if you ask me, these small little efforts will go a long way. So each of us sitting in this room, we all have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. I have a legacy to leave. I'm a police officer. I had an opportunity to serve. I have an opportunity to deliver. And I take it very seriously. So my appeal to all of you today is that please take your responsibility seriously. Within your own sphere, within your own homes, within your own community, the institutions where you work, try to make that change. So change starts with us. Values must start at home. So with these words, I would like to thank you. Thank you, Manu, for giving me this opportunity. Let's hope for a brighter future, and I hope that 2018 will be a good year for women. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rajeshwari, for highlighting those the acute nature of the problem through those 5 instances that you related, and also for asking this very pertinent question that one of the issues that we keep grappling about is do we need representation? Do we need enough women in the police force to take care of women? Do we need enough Muslims in the police force to take care of Muslims? Can't we rely on a general, secular, educated police force to take care of all of us? Can't we rely on a regular political machinery, a democratic machinery to look after everybody? Do we need women in parliament to look after women? Do we need Muslim representation in bureaucracy and in parliament to look after the Muslim? It's a difficult issue to talk about. If I go slightly more political, then what happens when the president of the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, who comes and lectures to us on Doordarshan, tells us that much of the problem in today's society is because people have forgotten what the marriage contract is. The marriage contract, according to him, is where men work and women look after the kitchen. It's when women do not honor that contract that evil comes into society. So, so how are we going to address this issue? Who are we going to elect? Shall we elect the chief minister that Ms. Murtaza talked about, who said that, men will be men, and my chief minister in Haryana who said that if women go out after 10 o'clock, then they should be raped, right? So what are the answers to these tough questions? We hope to get some of them today. I would now request Mr. Andrew Fleming, British Deputy High Commissioner, Hyderabad, to come in.
By 2030, with a view to consider on how to accelerate the 2030 agenda, building momentum for the effective implementation of the new Sustainable Development Goals, especially goal number 5, that focuses on the achievement of gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls, and goal number 4, that focuses on initiatives to ensure inclusive and quality education for all and promote lifelong learning. Both of these Sustainable Development Goals in particular are important in today's discussion. Education is one of the world's most powerful forces for good, empowering communities and unlocking talent and ambition, while the Millennium Development Goal on universal access to education has achieved some real impact, including improvements on gender parity. But there's still a long way to go in many regions. To quote one remarkable woman who has emerged this century, Malala Yousafzai, "Let us pick up our books and our pens. They are our most powerful weapons." And I think it's right that I point out that education for girls is the number one priority set by my current boss, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, and something that the UK is highly focused on, and something that I hope we will find opportunities to engage on and support and advocate in our work here in Hyderabad and across both of the Telugu-speaking states of India. The theme for this year, in 2018, however, is Time is Now, Rural and Urban Activities Transforming Women's Lives. And this will provide essential momentum to the current unparalleled global movement for women's rights, especially equality and justice to counter and deter sexual harassment, violence and discrimination against women for a more equal future. This day intends to draw attention to the rights and activism of rural women, who make up over a quarter of the world's population and majority of the 43% of women in the global agricultural labour force. The world of work is changing, and with significant implications for women. On the one hand, we have globalisation, technological and digital revolution, and the opportunities that this brings. On the other hand, the growing informality of labour, unstable livelihoods and incomes, new fiscal and trade policies, and environmental impacts, all of which have a bearing on women's economic empowerment. Measures to ensure women's economic empowerment in the world of work include bridging the gender pay gap, which currently stands at 24% globally, recognising women's unpaid care and domestic work and addressing the gender deficit in care work, addressing the gender gaps in leadership, entrepreneurship, and access to social protection, and ensuring gender-responsive economic policies for job creation, poverty reduction, and sustainable inclusive growth. Policies to address this need to target the overwhelming majority of women in the informal economy, to promote women's access to innovative technologies and practices, decent work and climate-resilient jobs, to protect women from violence in the workplace. There is a fair amount to celebrate. Women are more visible in senior roles in business, in politics, in entertainment and art. Worldwide, women contribute more and more confidently to social, economic, cultural, and political achievement. It is not one-way traffic, and we cannot take anything for granted. The fact that we have an International Women's Day is to redress the balance in a world that has for far too long treated women as second best. Our previous Foreign Secretary, William Hague, caught the attention of the world when he united with UN Special Envoy Angelina Jolie to take forward a major conference on preventing sexual violence in conflict. Even my colleague doesn't know this because I didn't tell her, but I worked on this conference, and for one day and one day only, I was one of the people that was assigned to look after Angelina Jolie. And one thing that she did, which I particularly liked, they had a lot of small civil society organisations with stalls there, giving out their literature and selling items to raise funds. There was about 20 of these stalls. She went to each and every one of the stalls and spent time, her supposed downtime, speaking to the women on those stalls and buying something from every one of those stalls. And that is something that really impressed me in terms of humanity and her actions. And any conference, including this one, has to be judged on what comes out of it. You have to look back on a conference after 3 months or 6 months or even a year and say what's changed as a result. And I think we can all say that on the Conference for Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict, we have actually seen, and that conference actually influenced, drafted changes in international law that can really make a difference. The British High Commission here in India are also active on gender issues. We have supported projects nationally in areas like building awareness around safety and sexual harassment among girls, ensuring greater social participation of tribal women, and capacity building of civil society organisations across India that are working to support women's rights. In Hyderabad, we have conducted a series of workshops to promote awareness among schoolgirls and college students of issues around sexual harassment. In these, we work closely with law enforcement and use mobile apps to map and identify unsafe areas in the city. We helped participants to identify and call out inappropriate behaviours and guided them towards the resources that are in place to give them support. These are imperfect, but they are improving. And the work of the SHE team here in Hyderabad is also another significant point. One my colleague here again also touched upon, but something I take with me everywhere I go, both in India and in the world, about an example of good practice and making a difference to protecting women in their cities and in their homes. My counterpart, Bharat Joshi in Tamil Nadu and Kerala, delivered a first-of-its-kind project to help victims of violence against women by sensitising law enforcement, legal and associated practitioners to the challenges faced by victims. 170 legal police and judicial officers took part in these workshops and undertook to spread their learning to districts across both states. The resulting handbooks in Tamil and Malayalam will play a part in delivering improved access and speedier justice. A newly designed learning and sharing manual for stakeholders across India, based on the work that arose from that project, is now under preparation. The finished product will help stakeholders to better understand the history and context of related legislation and how to apply it successfully in practice. Here in Hyderabad, we recently took part in a project across the southern Indian states that focused on the issue of deliberate burning, self-inflicted or otherwise, and this is something that clearly has blighted the lives of so many women. This project included shedding a light on the causes and strengthening the support and infrastructure. I also had the opportunity, both here in India and in my previous work in Nigeria and elsewhere in Africa, to have interacted with survivors, women survivors of violence, and women survivors who have been victims of trafficking. I've listened to their tragic experiences, and I have seen firsthand the wonderful work being done by so many civil society organisations to mainstream them and their children and give them support to fully recover and become active and confident citizens. There are many challenges, and they are multidimensional. Nobody can do everything, but we're all here, and we should all be keen and look and try to do what we can. I'd like to take some time to recognise the women in India and around the world who are making a difference. A few of them I know are even in this room. A few more are famous, but most of them are unknown and will remain that way. They are the unsung ones who day by day in their villages and in their communities all over the world are building better lives for themselves, their families, their sisters, and their nations. At the same time, we need to acknowledge and encourage those men who choose to defy lazy stereotypes to energetically support this agenda. I have met some men who are self-proclaimed feminists, and indeed, I'm quite proud to put myself into that same bracket. Now, I know that feminism has become a very loaded term, but it's important that we reclaim it for the benefit of advancing women's empowerment by bringing it back into the mainstream where it truly belongs. We all recognise that changing the way women behave is not enough to make women's lives better. In a world where men hold many of the cards, our behaviour is crucial. From my experience of travelling the world, I believe it is happening. Not as much or as quickly as I would like to see, but there is definitely a groundswell of change, driven in no small part by the growing awareness created through mass information and programs and activities such as this event today. Let me conclude by thanking everyone associated with today's event, especially Professor Shahida Murtuza, Dean, School of Arts and School Sciences, Professor Shakil Ahmed, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Amir Ullah Khan, Director, CSE Academy, Ms. Reema Rajeshwari from the Telangana Police, and our friends here from the Rubaru team, with whom we have worked so closely, Queen's young leader Neha Swain, and Manisha, Hema and Rashimi to lend their support and cause for today's event. And thank you to all participants in today's conference for each one of your efforts in championing this wonderful initiative. Please remember, it's not for a day. It's something that we have to do every day and every day of our lives until women are treated equally. I sincerely hope that the recommendations from this conference will translate into good policy initiatives with scope for affirmative action in the cause for women's empowerment and gender equality. I am also happy to note that several of our youth campaigners trained in our earlier community cohesion program in collaboration with Rubaru were a part of the gender sensitization workshops and are now gender champions as well. Before I close, I'd like to quote from India's first Prime Minister, Punjit Jawaharlal Nehru, speaking to his daughter Indira Gandhi, which I think sums up a lot of what has been said very well. There are two kinds of people in the world. The people who get things done and the people who take all the credit. Be in the first group because there's much less competition. I'm tempted to say that the majority of the first group are probably women. Isn't it about time that they got a fair share of the credit too? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your conference.
You would have noticed that I deliberately shook Andrew's hand for two reasons. One is that he claimed that he was a self-confessed feminist. So Andrew, one reason for shaking your hand was that. The other was that he must have, during that entire day, he must have shaken Angelina Jolie's hand several times. So not just because she's the most glamorous person on earth, but because of the kind of work that she has done. It is just phenomenal. The kind of work she's done on maternal health, on child health is just amazing. I would now request my colleague, Professor Mehboob Jan, to come up for a minute. She's my colleague here. She teaches social science and history, and she's just published her recent book, which is a significant contribution to teaching social science. I would like her to thank you so much. May I request Professor Shahida Murtaza to lead Andrew Fleming. Chaitra? Yeah, exactly. Come up. Shoma, sit wherever you want. Yeah, Sikandar साहब का रहना तो